right, to one of his Hasidim.
Right.
So the Chus said to the Rebbe, "What you doing?" So the Rebbe says, "You can't kick her out. You gotta suffer. You can't kick her out. There's no way."
Right.
So the Chus said, "But why should I have to suffer? This is the Tzorchei Tzibur.
Let everybody chip in.
Yeah. So the Rebbe said, it doesn't work like that. She's your tenant, it's your mitzvah."
Really?
So when we find her, told Shmuel, he's such a big tzaddik, go sit next to the roof. He's all alone.
Right.
Right? So Shmuel, I'm going to speak to you. Says, I'll make all the big boys. Right?
So I got to sit in the room now too.
Huh?
So Shlomi found that spoke to me last night. I'll have to go sit in the room.
No, that's not true. That's not what happened.
Shlomi, I spoke to Shlomi last night.
You tell Shmuel.
I was with Shlomi in the car. I went with him to Menachem Abba last night. In the car, he said, we have to sit, we have to move the room. I'll tell you what he told me.
Okay.
So what are you trying to?
So I told Shlomi, I don't understand what you're talking about. You thought of the mitzvah. It's your mitzvah.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, because it's not enough that one person sitting in the row. The row should be sitting in the crowd. Okay.
You're talking too much. It's like your wife told me, shut up a minute.
Okay. Okay.
So I said, so I like her. Like me. I know her well. No, she didn't say that. So I said, so I told Shlomi, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal. If you go to the room, I'll come with you. And then I looked at Akiva and I said, you know, Akiva, if I go with Shlomi, then you come with me. Okay, so we're all three together. So Shlomi shook my hand and Akiva shook my hand, and we said that next week we're going to go to the room. So last night I saw Akiva here. Right, we were all together, right? And everybody left. The Rebbe left, you left, and I went over to Akiva. I said, Akiva, you know, this is what I did to Shmuel. You know why I did that to Shmuel? I told this to Shmuel that I had his back because, and I got his commitment because I told him that I'm afraid that you guys are not going to show up next week, right? Akiva sometimes don't come, and Shlomi doesn't come. That's like making it nice that Akiva doesn't come sometimes. But sometimes he comes.
I don't come for all shows. I usually come for the Rav Russia.
So I told him, I'm afraid that you guys are not going to show up. So I went to Shmuel and I told him, Shmuel, I got your back over there with Shlomi, but if these guys don't show up, then I need you to come with me. So Shmuel said, no problem. I'm with you all the way.
Okay. Okay.
Right? So what Shlomi told you is not accurate.
Okay.
The room is fine.
Okay, so let's get started. I
feel like I missed all the excitement.
Well, everyone could see you.
I don't know what just went down.
When I was the Rav, you know how it's lonely at the top. So by Shalosh Shudas, nobody sits near the row. There's a gap of like 10 seats, and then the other starts to seat. Because the older generation who would sit around him moved to a place where the Rav is not prepared to move to yet. And because of that, I mean Baltimore and Lakewood. And because of that, it's not respectful to Rav to stay by himself. So the young crowd. When they say young crowd, you have to take that with like a mound of salt. The crowd that realizes that now we're in place of the old people. You know, when it comes to the first hakafa, we glide into that position when there's nobody else to take it. Well, that's the same job as taking the first hakafa extends to sitting up front near the Rav by Shalosh Shudas, so there shouldn't be a gap. It's all part of the same movement rotation. You know, it's like those pencils that we used to have that you took out the dull lead and you put it on the bottom and pushed out the next one. So that's what happens. Okay, so let's start on the Gemara on Daf Lamed Amud Aleph. I was hoping to finish the Masechta today. I might still be able to. But let's see, it is a fast Masechta, so we'll see if we can do it fast. Erev Tisha B'Av Lo Yoichel Adam based Tafshilim. It's about 10 lines from the top on Daf Lamed Amud Aleph. You're not supposed to have two Tafshilim. That we say you cannot have two sudos, that's from Chatzos and on. Now in the morning you can eat. It's only in the afternoon as we're ushering in Tisha B'Av, that's when you have to go easy on the tafshilim. But if it's in the first half of the day, mutter, you're allowed to have the two tafshilim. This is only but a suda hamafsekes. In other words, if you're having a suda before the suda hamafsekes, even in the afternoon of Erev Tisha B'Av, eat whatever you want. Dafka but a suda hamafsekes, you have to limit yourself. So there's two conditions in order to have chumrah. A, it has to be in the afternoon, and B, it has to be suda hamafsekes. And of course, it's both lakula. You need both conditions in order to answer the two tafshilim. Utricha, and you need the Gemara to tell us this. You need to tell us this because otherwise you wouldn't know the two rules. Yashmin b'suda mafsikva. If we would have only known that the isser to have two tafshilim is in the super of sekes, you would have thought, what if someone has a super of sekes very early in the first half of the day? He also has to limit it to one tafshil. Kamash v'lon mishay shoyshel l'mayla. Only if the suda is eaten in the afternoon. Yashmin mishay shoyshel l'mayla, and if we only do the halacha, then if you eat a suda in the afternoon, you have to limit it to one tafshil. I would have thought any meal you eat in the afternoon, you have to restrict yourself. Kamash v'lon b'suda hamafsik. So at the end of the day, you're allowed to eat whatever you want in the morning. You're allowed to eat whatever you want in the afternoon. But if it's in the afternoon and it's the suda hamafsekes, then you have to limit. Zok to more weiter. Tanya kalishna kama. Tanya Kalishna Brasa. We have a brisa that expresses it like the Lishna Kama, and we have a brisa that expresses it like the Lishna Brasa. Let's start with the Lishna Brasa. Tanya Kalishna Brasa. Hasai there of Tisha B'Av. If one is dining there of Tisha B'Av, im osid lisait suda cheres. If he's eventually going to have another suda, then by the first suda mutil lechel basar v'lishtus yayin. He's allowed to eat basar and drink yayin. V'im lav. But if not, if he's not going to have another suda, meaning this is the suda samav sekes, also lechel basar v'lishtus yayin. Tanya Kalishna Kama. We had a brisa that says like the first lashon. Erev Tisha B'Av lo yochel adum shnei tafshilin. Erev Tisha B'Av one may not eat two tafshilin. Lo yochel basar v'lo yishteh yayin. He shouldn't eat basar nor should he drink wine. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Omer yishana. All he has to do is change from his normal way of eating, not necessarily to restrict these things completely. Amar Yehuda Keted Mishana. How does one change his normal way of eating? Imay Yiragol lechel shnei tafshilin. If he normally would eat two tafshilin, now he should limit himself to one. And if he would normally dine with 10 people, he should eat with a smaller crowd. If he would normally drink 10 kaisais, he should limit himself to 5 kaisais. And this is the focal point, this is the Lishna Kama. This that you don't have to restrict yourself. This that you do have to restrict yourself is only the second half of the day of Erev Tisha B'Av. But the first half of the day on Erev Tisha B'Av, mutter. Tanya Duchil another brisa. Erev Tisha B'Av lo yochel adam shnei tafshilin. A person shouldn't have two tafshilin. Lo yochel basar v'lo yishteh yayin. He should not eat meat nor drink wine. Divrei Meir v'chachamim ma'imim yishana. He should just do things a little bit differently from what he's used to. He should go easy on the basar, easy on the yayin. Kated the ma'it. How does one minimize what he eats? How does he reduce it? That's the question of every dieter. Kated the ma'it. How in the world do you do it? If he would normally have a whole litra of cholesterol, he should cut his cholesterol in half. If he used to eat 100 grams of carbohydrates, he should cut that in half. He should only have half a lug of wine. But if he normally doesn't eat any of these things, these are not the types of food that he normally eats. Also, it's completely also. In other words, definitely don't dine fancier during the Erev Tisha B'Av than you would do the rest of the year. I don't know what that is. If you would normally eat sinoim, if you would have radish or maliach after the suda, then harishos biyadoi, then you would be allowed to do that. Let's see. Let's see what Rashi says. Rashi says maliach is dog oibasa maliach. It's salted food. The ein beitam kol kach achashishosh l'shiyomim. That's a little bit weiter. That's a little bit weiter. Okay. Zog to Gemara weiter. Zog to Gemara weiter. Tanyidach. Kol shu mishum Tisha B'Av. Also lachol basar lishas yain. Anything that's because of Tisha B'Av, it's usher to drink wine and eat meat. And Rashi says, what does it mean? Shehu mishum Tisha B'Av. It means kagoin suda hamafsik. It means the suda that you're being mafsik with. The suda hamafsekes. You should not drink basar. You should not eat basar or drink wine. Basar lirchitz. You're not a babe. Kol she'eni mishum Tisha B'Av. But if it's just a regular meal, it's not the suda hamafsekes. Mutar lachabasar v'lishas yain. Also lirchitz. Rechitzis to loss. Kol shah shemutar lachal basar. As long as you're allowed to eat basar, mutar lirchitz, you're also allowed to bathe.
This is a question. I thought every shita here seems to imply that you can eat meat and drink wine after Rosh Chodesh.
That's correct. So where
Where do we come up with you can't eat it from Rosh Chodesh? They're eating it even Erev Tisha B'Av. So,
We obviously don't pass like these shitas.
but this is every shita.
It's only about two seconds you're not allowed.
I understand.
So we don't
That's
pass
not-
like. I don't think we're passing like these shitas. Like I don't even think.
It just seems like this is everybody. This is
Sorry?
not just right.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
don't even think.
every side of the brisa, every brisa, the machlokas isn't eating it during shu shechalboy or from Rosh Chodesh. It's
Seems like there's no restriction on it. at
no
all.
restriction.
That's what it seems like from these shitas. That's right. That's what it seems like.
Tell Victor tell Victor that you attain the new.
You could tell, you could figure yourself.
Victor Tzaddik, you attain a new level of respect because you're the only one that's able to ask a question on 2 times speed.
Okay, I should slow down. Okay, I'll slow down. I don't know what happened to the screen.
Miami can pop up behind you and you won't even know what's going on.
I do not know what happened to the screen. Let me see if I can get it to work again. It says not playing. I'm not sure why. Cast my screen. I'll do this again. Cast screen. Start now. I don't know if it's going to work or not. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. We will see in a minute. Oh, it's time to do something. Okay, let's see the Gemara back. Let's see the Gemara back. But that's a good point. It seems like this sheet holds you allowed to eat it. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yosy, Rabbi Shmuel, Kol Shasha Mutar Lechal Basar, Mutar Lechotz. Tell her about it. Call mitzvahs hanahagas be'evel. Anything that's any mitzvah that's nageva. Aval nahagas b'Tisha B'Av is also noig b'Tisha B'Av, which means also b'chilu v'shtia, which happens not to be noig be'evel. Rashi speaks out. Uve usicha uve nus hasandu v'tash v'shamita. Those are of course by evel. But also likrois b'Torah b'nuvim uksuvim. You're not allowed to learn Torah nuvim uksuvim on Tisha B'Av. V'lashanis v'mishnah to learn mishnayis, v'talmud, the Gemara, v'medrash, v'halachos, v'agados. You're not allowed to indulge in all of these pleasures on Tisha B'Av. Avol, Kairehu, the Makam She'ena Ragal Likros. You're allowed to learn in a place, in a sugya that you're not used to learning. And Rashi says, even the Yada is Litzara. Since you don't know it, you're struggling to understand it, therefore you have tsar. But normal Torah, Rashi says, Misam Chelev is not appropriate that you should do something that's Misamech Salev. You want to look back because I'm not bothered by what Victor said, but it seems like. Oh, 1 second. Yeah, no, it's mashma. It's mashma that we're speaking not only in Shabbos, we're speaking the whole week. Yeah. Okay, so let's see the Gemara weiter. Why? Because that's not so geschmack. You're struggling to understand. The Kara Bekinis, you're allowed to read the Kinnis in Eoif. Uvidvarim haroyim shebiyirmiyah, and the sad stories, the tragic stories in Yirmiyah. V'tinoge shel b'srabon b'telim. Even the tinoge shel b'srabon don't learn. Mishum shenemar pikudei Hashem yisharim misam chelev, and that's not appropriate for Tisha B'Av. That's right. So there is a machlokes. If they're supposed to or they're not supposed to. The Gra holds they should learn. But others learn not like the Ra, learn like our Girsa, that say they should not learn.
How did the Ra change the Girsa?
Maybe he had a different Girsa. I don't know. But the Gra does check that out. Let's take it out.
To me, the Gemara was also strange because it doesn't use another pasuk.
I'm sorry?
It doesn't use another pasuk to prove that. It's the same Pekudei Hashem Yisrael.
Well, that's why it's a little schwer the Gra, because the Gra says Ein B'Teilen Mishum Shenam Pekudei Hashem Yisrael. So you must take out Mishum Shenam Pekudei Hashem Yisrael, because that wouldn't be the pasuk wouldn't be a reason why the children should learn. The pasuk is a reason why the children shouldn't learn. Okay, Gavalti. Reviewed Oimer Af Einei Kaira B'Makom She'ein Ragal. Like right, you shouldn't even learn a sugya that you normally don't learn. The Einei Shoynim B'Makom She'ein Ragal L'Shamais, and you're not allowed to learn psukim that you're not familiar with. You're not allowed to learn mishnayos you're not familiar with. Awal Kaira who be Eoid who be Kinois who be Dvar Haram should be Yermiyo. V'Tinoge shall be Shraban B'Telim Boy. Mishum Shnemar Pekudei Hashem Yisharim Misam Chelim. Gewaltig. Zogt the Gemara weiter. Lo yoichel basar v'lo yishta yain. Tana, aval oichel hu basar meliach, he can eat salted meat. And Rashi tells us a little bit about what this salted meat is. So Rashi says, basar meliach, Rashi says is, let me see if I could find it in Rashi. Meliach dag or basar meliach, salted meat. The ein by tam kolkach. If it's heavily salted, it doesn't have so much of a taste. Once it's soaked, it's coated for 3 days in salt. So the shlomim will be salted for 2 days. It's still called basar. But once it exceeds that, if it's 3 days in salt, it doesn't have the status of basar because it loses some of its taste. So the shoyse yain migita, you're allowed to drink grape juice. Basar meliach at kama. How much does it have to be salted for it to lose its status of meat, and that you should be allowed to eat it? Or once it's past the level of salting of a shlom, which is 2 days, which it's past that point, then it's not considered meat anymore. The yain migita at kama. What's called yain migita before it's considered fermented? As long as it's still reiseach, during the fermenting process, it bubbles. You actually see it's bubbling, right? As long as it's still bubbling and hasn't finished, it's not completed its fermentation process. It's still called yain migita, which would be you'd be allowed to drink it. According to this sugya, we don't drink grape juice, right? No, we don't drink. Tell the yain taises ain't by b'shum gilui. A yain taises, which means wine that's not fully fermented, there's no problem with gilui. Rashi says she'ain nacha she'seyu. The snake, when it sees it bubbling, that'll scare the snake. So there's no chance that the snake is going to drink it. Do you know something very interesting? I didn't know this. So I had a conversation with my children, Shabbos Chanukah, and I asked them, how many of you are able to have total kavanah throughout the entire davening without spacing out for 1 second? So nobody could say that they have kavanah about a total shminesh without spacing out, because we went to the Gemara from the Yosy that nobody could do it. So we were discussing how you're able to. So my son told me over from Shmuel Kamenetsky, maybe to Bavus Zach, but I never heard it before. If you're very makbid on not drinking any mashke magulam, which means if you leave, and it doesn't mean overnight, if you'll never drink something that was left uncovered, unsupervised, because if Shmuel, if he goes away from the table, he'll put something over his cup. If you never drink something that's not supervised, that's not uncovered, that will help you have kavanah. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know, but I know that my son told me he watches them carefully, and if they get up from the table to go somewhere in the middle of the meal to go to the bathroom or whatever, they'll always cover over their cup.
I know the Goyen was very, very makbid about that, right? So he wouldn't take anything, even if something was uncovered in a locked room, if it was overnight, he was makbid on that. He's also
That's probably where Shmuel gets it from.
And it's also that when he was giving the shear one time, so lightning struck, the thunder struck,
right,
when he was giving shear, and
right,
the Talmidei Chacham at the time said the bracha.
Right.
So the guy looked up.
He didn't even hear it.
Right. So they said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I didn't say." The bothers me not that we had to the men. The bothers me that
You heard
the sound.
Wow. Okay, so the comment is sasai, and how long is a normal fermentation process? Gimel yom. This was the minute of Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi. Erev Tisha B'av, on the Erev Tisha B'av, Mavi'in lepas chareva b'melach. They would bring him dried bread with salt. V'yoshev, and he would sit. Bein tanu l'chirayim. He would sit in the corner between the oven and the kirayim. Rashi says mokam and nuvel shebevayis. It was not exactly the most comfortable recliner in the house. V'oichel v'shoyse aleha. And over there, he would drink and eat. What would he do? Kisha and Shamayim, a little jug of water. The doime, he looked so sad. He felt the tsar of Tisha B'av. He was literally sitting like he was sitting shiva. The places where the minig is to do malach on Tisha B'av, oisin you do. Where the minig is not to do malach on Tisha B'av, ein oisin you don't do. But in all places, Talmidei Chachamim b'telim. Talmidei Chacham don't do work on Tisha B'av. Shimon ben Gamliel Omer la'olam yasa adam atzvei k'talmid chacham. L'gabe this, a person should make himself like a talmid chacham, meaning he should not do malacha on Tisha B'av. Tanya mihachi, Shimon ben Gamliel Omer la'olam yasa adam atzvei k'talmid chacham k'dei shi'asana. And this here is talking about not Tisha B'av. It's talking about the Taanis that were made for rain. And the first 3 Taanis were only done by the Yechidim, by the Talmid Chachamim. So there, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, everybody should make themselves like a Talmid Chacham V'dei Shisana. That's not called showing off, because it's not a mechubet to the zach. You're not sitting over noon. You're being misana yourself. For that, you're allowed to machzich for a Talmid Chacham. Tanya Yidich Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer Kol Oichel B'Shosheh B'Tisha B'Av Kilo Oichel B'Shosheh B'Yom Kippur. It's as if he's eating on Yom Kippur. If someone does malach on Tisha B'Av, and Rashi does just speak out malacha, doesn't mean he'll never succeed. From that malacha, he'll never see some bracha. If somebody is not misabel on Yerushalayim, he won't be zoicha to participate in the simcha. Shenemar simcha is Yerushalayim. The gilaba who kol ayaveh sisu ita misois kol misabel malach. Only those who are misabel on it will be zoicha to be misameich with it. Mikan amru kol misabel al Yerushalayim zoicha v'roya b'simchasa v'she'enem misabel al Yerushalayim einay roya b'simchasa.
That's pretty weak, because most of the people who are makabel b'shabbat, right, or Messiah, are not resulting in the simcha. They're all dead.
Yeah, but maybe b'shas tchis hamesim they'll be zoicha.
When this there will be a basic adjustment. Okay.
Tani namichachi kol oichel basa v'shosh yayin the Tisha B'Av all of akasavomer but he avaynoisam al atzmoisam. Their averis were on themselves. Rashi says the Tisha B'Av klimer besuda hamafsikva. It's not talking about eating meat. On Tisha B'Av, that's ogeret. That's like Mechal Yom Kippur. The Gemara just said. But if you eat about a mafsik, if you eat about Tisha B'Av sekes, then the averis on their own head. Now Tosfos goes through some interesting halachos of Tisha B'Av that's kedai to learn. Very easy stuff. That malacha that doesn't Tisha B'Av any roisim bracha. The chayiv adam l'tzayer u'lemayit b'chvoidoi u'v'hanoisa. Person has to be mitzayir himself and to limit his honor and his pleasures. If he normally use 2 pillows, he should only use 1 pillow. Women who are pregnant or just gave birth, they're not mechuyev to discomfort themselves so much. When it's very difficult for them to do this. We eat the sudas of course by daytime. The Tosfos Yom Kippurim in Torah, you have to add a little bit to Yom Kippur, meaning the Nuim have to start a little bit before actually Yom Kippur starts. If you eat the sudas of early, there's no reason to say you're not allowed to eat or drink anymore. Rabbi Yosy came to the city. He ate the sudas of and then also lagabe the Reish Kanishta, he came to the Gabbai, have a sod, and the Gabbai was eating. Amal Reish Kanishta, so I actually, and the Gabbai said, why don't you come eat with me? After he already ate the sudas of sekes very early, he was invited to join the Reish Kanishta. Amaloi Achlis Vivsikis. He said, I already ate, and I was mafsik. Amaloi Ashka Chalai, the Leilemrun, Hudin Gavra, Lo Eshka Chalai. So watch me. Achal Mikal, Eagle, Pasis, Achal Mikal Tavchol, so he ended up tasting from everything. So you see clearly that even though he made the sudas of sekes already, he's allowed to eat more. If you ate the sudas of sekes early and you have a lot of time, muter lishtois afilu erev Yom Kippurim v'chol shekein erev Tisha B'Av. Let's see the Gemara weiter. Tanya, Amru lo Rabbi Yehuda, l'dvarecha. According to you, ubarais u'menikois matayalid. I'm sorry, I skipped the Dibra Mascho. Rabbi Yehuda said you have to turn over your bed, so you shouldn't by mistake sleep on it. But if you have to turn over your bed, they asked Rabbi Yehuda, they can't sleep on the floor. They can't do this. He said, when I said you should turn your bed over, so you shouldn't come to sleep on your bed, I meant somebody who could sleep without a bed. But if you need to sleep on the bed, there you don't turn your bed over. Tanya Mihachi, Moed Rabbi Yehuda Chachamim v'she'eino yochel. Moed Chachamim Rabbi Yehuda b'yochel. So correct the Gemara, if the Chachamim Moed Rabbi Yehuda that you should do it if you could, and if Yehuda's Moed to the Chachamim that you don't do it if you can't, so then my binayu, where are they arguing? So Ikvenayu shar mitos. Are you supposed to turn over all the beds in your house? I have my bed in my room. Do I have to turn over all the beds in my house because I might go sleep in a different bed? So Rabbi Yehuda told you got to turn over all the beds in your house. The Chachamim say no. Don't you turn over your bed? Done. we pass on like our Tana, which means that you don't have to turn over any beds at all. Anything that you'd normally sleep on. So in my house, yes, it would include the couch, but in other houses, maybe not.
Then you can have the further posture, whether the couch is a sofa.
I hear it, yeah. So Rabbi Shlomo Yom Kippurim, I understand why it was such a beautiful Yom Tov. Shem de'is beslicha u'mechila, and it's Yom Shenitnu by Luchas HaChodesh. So that's an occasion. It's a Yom Tov Yisrael.
What about the Maimon?
We're going to get there. El Tuba of Mai, what's the Yom Tov? It's Tuba of. Amar de Mashmuel, it's Yom Shehutru Shvatim Elavoi Zebus. By the Benoist Tzolofchad, they were told that since the girls are getting a nachla, they should only marry people from their shevet. But that was only for that generation. For the next generation, it was already opened up that even girls who yarshened land could marry any shevet. My Dorosh, where do you see this in the pasuk? It says, "Dea dover asher tziva Hashem levnois tzolofchad, dover zeh lo yeh noig ela bedor zeh." It was only for the door of benois tzolofchad. Zok Rashi, where do you see this in this pasuk? Because the word zeh is a miyut. Zeh hadover, it's a miyut. So that's how we knew that Shidduchim opened up a lot after the first generation. By the mice of Pilegesh Begiva, they wanted to really take down Shevet Binyamin. So they made a rule that nobody's allowed to marry anybody from Shevet Binyamin. And they relaxed that restriction. Oh, so we won't let our wives marry Binyamin. This way the Shevet won't have kiyum. My Drosh, so where do you see that it was relaxed? It was only our generation that will not allow any of our daughters to marry B'nai Binyamin, but the next generation will be allowed to. So these two restrictions were removed on Tu B'Av, and that's the great Yom Tov. On Tu B'Av was the day that we realized that people aren't dying anymore. You have to understand, on Tisha B'Av, it's not yet a full moon. So if they don't die on Tisha B'Av, they could have made a slight miscalculation in what date it was. Until the Mesa Midbar didn't stop dying, there wasn't a direct dibur with Moshe Rabbeinu. Then V'yidaber Hashem Eli Haya Adiba. So even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe, but it wasn't a personal, wasn't Eli. So Rashi tells us that what happened is every year since they knew they were going to die in Tisha B'Av, all the men who were in that group of people that were subject to the Gzeira, instead of being Mitriach to Chever Kadisha, they dug their own grave. They went to sleep in the grave, and those who woke up were very excited. Those who didn't, they just covered them over. Right? This year, everyone lied down the grave. Everybody woke up, so they figured, hey, maybe it's not Tisha B'Av. Maybe we miscalculated. So they slept every night until Tu B'Av. Tu B'Av is a full moon. The moment they saw a full moon, there's no doubt anymore that Tisha B'Av is passed. So then, when they all woke up in the morning, they celebrated that they're not anymore included in the Gzeira. So that was the big Yom. Ulamar.
It's interesting because the full moon is not really the line. It's only when the moon starts to get smaller.
No, because the full moon you can't have on the 9th day of Av.
Yeah, you can't really tell if it's full or if it's almost full. Once it starts getting smaller, it's for sure getting smaller.
I hear.
Not from the other side.
Okay. So Ulamar Yom Shebitel Hasheya ben Allah Proistiyos Shahashav Yeravim ben Nevat Al Adrachim Shalayalu Shol Regel. Yeravim ben Nevat set up getchkes and he set up officers that did not let people go to be Oil Regel and forced them to go do Avodah Zarah. Hashem was no tzaddik. He still left Avodah Zarah there, but he didn't put the guards to force them not to go to be Oil Regel. So he at least gave him a chance. He gave him freedom of religion. The Yeravim wanted to force them to do Averis, but that's also a Mila. And it says, he said, you can go wherever you want. So before we go weiter, I just want to point out a lot about why on Yom Kippur, of all days on Yom Kippur, that's when they would do this whole zach with the girls. It's a shtickle modna, right? Victor who? Victor.
He says it's smaller. He says it's just like an Esther. The Horaya, just like you can figure out an Esther. Encourage it.
So the Mefarshim say a couple of things. First of all, this was only for the older girls who couldn't find shidduchim, right? They were the ones who came out, because because otherwise, most of the girls, their parents did the shidduchim for them. They didn't have to go parade themselves in front of the boys. All the girls, they had to do that. But why on Yom Kippur? Because Yom Kippur is a day where people want to be retired in the shamas. They're doing tshuva. In Yom Kedusha as well, right? Boys are being makabel upon themselves in Yom Kedusha. So one of the best ways to be mechazik in Yom Kedusha is to find the shidduch. And that's where they're told, don't look at Joyfi, you look at your shidduch Shem Shemayim, you're working on doing tshuva, you're working on being mechazik yourself, start right now. Start right here. That's right. We're really talking about those people here, not about the old people. So that's one of the sources why it was appropriate to even do it on Yom Kippur. Okay.
Even on Yom Kippur.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Zok the Heilige Gemara Vayter. So there's another great, wonderful thing that occurred on Tu B'Av. Rav Masna Omar. Now we're on Lamed Aleph already on the last daf. Yom Shenitnu Haruge Beitar L'Kfir. It was the day that the people that were murdered in Beitar were able to be buried. And Rashi tells us what happened over there. Was it Rashi? No, it wasn't Rashi. What happened was the butcher who killed them all used them. He had a very big kerem. He had a very big vineyard, and he used the bodies to build a fence around his vineyard. It was terrible. And eventually, they were able to bury them. The next ruler allowed them to be buried, and the next was also that they didn't rot. The day that Haruge Beitar were allowed to be buried, Tiknu b'Yavna Atoiva Meitiv. In Yavna, they were masakin the fourth brach of benching Atoiva Meitiv. Why Atoiva Meitiv? Atoiv Shelo Yisrichu, that the bodies didn't rot. Meitiv Shenitnu L'Kfura. And of course, everybody asks, why is this bracha in Birchas Hamazon? Why is it in Birchas Hamazon? So first, let's see Tosfos, which doesn't answer my question, but let's first see Tosfos. Tiknu b'Yavna Atoiva Meitiv Pirsh b'Birchas Hamazon. Mishum Hachi Tiknu Yoser Al Hayayin Hatoiva Meitiv. Tfebi b'Shar Dvarim. Why do we make a Birchas Hatoiva Meitiv on wine and we don't make it on other things? Lefi Shahayu Kumay Geder v'Kerem l'Nisra. Because the bodies were piled up around the kerem. So the Toiva Meitiv, which was really made for the Haruge Yavna, Haruge Beitar, those people were around the kerem, so that's why it's associated with wine. Why it's B'davke and Birchas Hamazon, I don't remember. I looked it up yesterday, but I don't remember. But I might as well look it up over here. Yeah, so let's see where it says. Because the Tosfos, no, it doesn't say. Because the Shatam should teknu up a Birchas Hamazon. Olay b'makam acher, mishum shaneis haya shem hayu kamay geder v'kerem v'lo yisrichu. Zechel neiseh teknu b'Birchas Hamazon al yayin. Oh, that's the word. Since we make Birchas Hamazon on wine, we normally bench the mezumin, we bench the kois. So therefore, when there's wine around, that's the time to do it. He brings the other farce as well. Okay, so I misunderstood Tosfos. Okay, the wine is you make a bracha on wine by Birchas Hamazon, so that's why they decided to put it there. He's talking more weiter. Rabbi Yosef, the Amri, a different reason. When they cut wood, they didn't want it to rot, so the wood had to be dried. The summer starts to wane starting from Tu B'Av. So while the summer is hot, that's when you cut wood because it'll continue to dry. But once the summer is waning and the wood will not dry properly, they stopped. So tomorrow, Yom Shaposkum Melichas Eitzim L'Maracha. Zok Tebra. I said Tanya Belezer Agad. I remember Chamisha Osabav the Tashes Koicha Chachama. The strength of the sun starts to wane, and therefore V'Lehoyu Korsin Eitzim L'Maracha. Any innovation because they won't dry so well. And Rashi says, so why is it a Yom Tov? Tosfos says, why is it a Yom Tov? What's the Yom Tov? They stop. So Tosfos, Pirish Shemayim Melichas Eitzim L'Maracha Pirish Mishum Shetalash Chalash Koicha Shalchama B'Gadatam B'Lois, and therefore it'll allow worms to fester. I'm sorry, I didn't see it over here. Could be the Mesivta brought it down that it was the day that they completed the mitzvah of preparing the wood, right? It was the day that they finished preparing the wood for the Beis Hamikdash. So when you finish a mitzvah, you make a Yom Tov.
No, Pasha, I can't use the wood choppers, but they will want to keep chopping. They have a break.
Very interesting, because look at what it was called. Amar Banashi, you know what the name of the Yom Tov was? Yom Taver Magal. The day you could break your axe. Why? Because they don't have to work anymore. Finally, the Chayt of Eitzim could take a break, exactly like Chaim Tzvi said. Bikan Velach, after Tu B'Av, which is the day where the sun wanes, meaning now the day starts to get shorter, right? The day starts to get, that's the equinox. So the day starts to get shorter. No, Tu B'Av is the longest day. Right. From Tu B'Av, it's not the equinox. It's the day after the longest day. Now the days are getting shorter. So the days are getting shorter, then the nights are getting longer. So what are you supposed to do with that extra night? When the nights are the minimum size, the Gemara says you're supposed to sleep at night. But once you have extra night, what do you do with that extra night time? Someone who learns more Torah, because now he has more time at night, he should learn more. But someone who's not going to learn Torah and use that extra night time to learn Torah, very, very, very harsh, should be gathered in, meaning he's going to die. His mother should bury him. And there's a whole bunch of different tratim, and what's up with the Lashon Tikbrei Ime? He should die. What's up Tikbrei Ime? So Rashi says, Yomas B'lo Yita. If his mother buries him, that means he's going to die before his mother. That means that he's dying young. So no one says that. No one says that she's at fault. But what they do say is, actually, it could be the one that the says. One of the says the mother is normally the one who works very hard to take the child to yeshiva, to pump the Yiddishkeit in them. And since he didn't learn from his mother, that's why his mother buries him. But I don't know if I saw someone who said the fair because she didn't do it.
Was lacking in what she was supposed to do.
I hear what you're saying, but I don't know if I saw someone who said that. I don't know if I saw someone who said it. I mean, I definitely saw it in the Masifta. So let me see what he brings down over here.
The way you're saying there's a lack of a connection. Why should she be the one to bury him?
It just means that he. It just means that he will have to. Oh no, I looked it up in the Yaakov Bureau. Yeah. But that's an onish to the parent, right? And the way we learned it was an onish to the.
He's dead.
Yeah.
He's got his own. Why should she be the one to bury him?
So let me quickly see what he said inside because I did notice it. So it says over here, Pirush Rashi, the Masha. No, that's right there. So what does he? The Masha says, Dafka Ima Tikvrenu. It's a remiss to what Shlomo said that. And since he wasn't Oisha with Torah B'Layla, and the mother didn't give him Musar. So it is an Oish to the mother, the Mashar brings down, because she didn't tell her son, you better go learn. But he also brings down, why Dafka the mother, not the father, because the father has other mitzvahs that he's mechuyev on, but the wife, her main schos is that she helps her child learn Torah, and since she wasn't careful, that's why. Oh, the Ben Yoda says, that it's by the Isha it says Atakam by Laila by Titan careful of meaning the women. What do the women do? They got up in the middle of the night to take care of the house. So this guy saw his mother getting up in the middle of the night to take care of the house, and he didn't learn from her to also get up early to do things that was his responsibility. Therefore, he won't be zeichet to bury his mother. Rather, he'll die and she'll bury him. So the Hizak Brenu is, according to the Ben Yehuda and other Shittas, is not an oynish to the mother. It just means it's oynish to you that you'll be buried by your mother, meaning you're going to die young. Okay, so let's see the Gemara Vayta. Shabehen benois Yerushalayim. This is when the benois Yerushalayim came to show themselves so that they can get married. Taner Rabban, Bas Melech, everyone had to borrow clothing. So everyone borrowed clothing from one level lower than them. So Bas Melech She'eles mi Bas Kohen Gadol. And Rashi says, Ababisha Hayala, even though she had her own clothing, She'eles mi Bas Kohen Gadol. Why should a Levias as a She'eles mi Tech Sheila? Not to invite a girl who's borrowing because she doesn't have another option. Okay, Gewaltic. So Bas Kohen Gadol is mi Bas Sagan. For the next level down, mi Bas Sagan, mi Bas Mashuch Muhammad. Bas Mashuch Muhammad, mi Bas Kohen Hedjit. The whole Yisrael She'elan Zemizeh. So someone who does not have an option and all they could do is borrow, they won't be embarrassed because everybody is borrowing. You might think if it's clothing that someone had just worn, so if she was tamei, she'll be mitama the beged. But if this is a folded veged, it's freshly cleaned, so that there's no chance it's going to be tamei, you still have to tovel it anyway. Why? Zokrashi, shalai levai, shetzrichet tefillah. Not to be mevayish anybody who needs tefillah. Everybody has to tovel. The noise Israel yoytzos b'cholos b'kram, they go dance in the vineyards. Tana misha einloi isha nifna l'sham. Any person who didn't have a wife, the el to the buchrim, they had to go. So they clap yiskar el to the buchrim, kaitzados, to go to the mochel, so that they should be able to pick wives. Why by the krumim? Al in ve'gefen, bin ve'gefen.
But it doesn't say that the girls were old.
The Mesivta brings down most of the girls, the parents are mashadach them. Here they were getting involved themselves. So they were all the girls who didn't get married earlier. Yeah, he does bring it down for somebody. I don't know whom.
I know a big tzaddik who said it was only really good.
Oh, it's not Rebbe?
No, not a big tzaddik.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, so let's have a look. He says, it says in the Kallah, it says that the reason why they were Isaac and Shaduchim, in this Oifen, he brings down, is Mishum Shoyu Benois, Shoyu Bonois, Shaloi Yisil Maveseim, Kishoyu Ketanos, Lahayla Mammon. Their fathers couldn't marry them off because they had no money. So they were left older, they were on their own. Uchadei, Shaloi Yeshu, Achi Albinu Rashayim. In order that these girls should get married before their hair is white, Amru Chazal, Sheyichabshu as Yivugam Boy from Zeh. They created this unconventional method of finding the zivik. Vatam she'asku b'sheduchim b'yom kippurim v'sam b'taf b'yom kippur b'yer b'ben yayada she'av she'im ha'kippurim b'yom kadosh v'noira ha'yoshkum b'sheduchim mishum chibov mitzvahs hanasuin and b zuchdei laharis kama gedoyla v'yikara mitzvazu she'av b'yom kadosh kazeh oshkum bo sheduchim are appropriate even on Yom Kippur. V'mashakasav she'mashamavur b'mishnah she'yoyrim bachar sai necha they the bachar look at me. How do you say it? How do you tell a bachar to look at me, gaze at me? They weren't telling them, look at my beauty. Right away they said, don't look at the physical beauty. Since it's also to marry someone until you look at her, that's why they had to insist that they looked at them. So they actually had to take matters into their own hand to be able to get married. Look at our families. The beautiful girls, what would they say? Look at my beauty. So everyone highlighted what they brought to the table.
I thought they just said that.
No, they said, look at the mishpacha. You want your children to be Rebbe Sheineklich. If you marry me, then your children will be Rebbe Sheineklich, because I'm a Rebbe Sheineklich. You're only marrying a woman to have children. So Mamela, look at the yichus. What if they were ugly and they didn't have Rebbe yichus either? So how did they market themselves? They would say, you should get married to L'Shem Shemayim, you should be able to make your kedusha. But don't think we're going to be happy with your L'Shem Shemayim. We still want you to help us beautify ourselves. After you marry us, we still want you to buy beautiful clothing. Now you shouldn't look for looks. Well, after you marry us, then we want you to spend a lot of money on us so that we can beautify ourselves. So Acher and Yisur Rashi says, after we get married, give us beautiful jewelry. So Zok Rashi Milsa Ba'amud Amri. This time they were saying, claim that wasn't part of the. They were just saying it wasn't part of the attraction. Amar Ula Bira, Amar Belazar. Also, that Kadosh Baruch Hu lasses machal tzadikim. Eventually, Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to make a circle for the tzadikim in Gan Eden. Yosy b'neim gid b'Gan Eden, and Hashem will sit amongst us in Gan Eden. So Mitchell will finish these last two lines tomorrow. I want to make a scene tomorrow. We'll make a scene tomorrow by the main minion right after, so they won't be talking. So Misham, tomorrow we will start Megillah one day early.